Now, Dinesh may make the argument, yeah, but religion is good for people. It makes them more moral, they're healthier, and so on. Well, that may be. But what we're looking at here is by deconstructing it, well, what is it that makes people obey the rules if they think they're being watched? So it's not that religion has a monopoly on that. They were the first to exploit that idea. The invisible eye in the sky is watching you. But as we've seen from Northern European countries that have pretty much the reverse of the percentages of belief that we have. Maybe 10 to 20% believe in God, and the rest of Scandinavia countries, Norway, Denmark, Sweden, and so on. And they get along just fine. They have much lower rates of crime and abortion and STDs and suicide rates than Americans do. So one question is if religion is so great, then how come we have amongst the highest rates of social ills compared to these Northern European countries?
But we have someone like Ayman al-Zawahiri, right? A surgeon. He comes from one of the most respected families in Egypt. He's got doctors and judges and pharmacists as far as the eye can see. He is not an exception. He is not. If you correct for literacy in the Muslim world, support for suicide bombing goes up. I mean, this is the most radicalized people are not the people who, in particular, well, you can see this in microcosm when you actually look at the biographies of the 19 hijackers. These were all college educated. Many of them had PhDs. I mean, it's just not religion really is separable as the most important variable. And what is actually right on the surface to be seen is that these people are telling us what is motivating them. The jihadis are talking all day long about the pleasures that await martyrs in paradise, the horrors of living in proximity with the infidels, the desecration of the Muslim holy sites by the proximity of infidel troops on the ground. I mean, this is, Osama bin Laden tells us what motivates him. He's telling us why he's not living in Paris and dating models with his inheritance. I mean, he is being quite articulate ad nauseum. And so to deny the role that religion is playing, I would never for a moment say that there are not poor, mistreated people driven to extremis and to extreme violence for reasons other than religion. Of course, that happens. But this is a separable component which we have rendered, by the terms of our discourse, by our emotional attachment to it, immune to criticism. It is taboo to say that the Quran is bogus as a document that describes the history of the evolution of our species, as a document that makes really cogent prescriptions about how to live in the 21st century, as is the Bible. Almost entirely bogus if you're going to take it as a text to live by. It is taboo to say that. You could not possibly get elected in this country if you even openly doubted whether or not there was a creator God listening to the prayers of your constituents. I mean, this is the world we are living in, and it's Sam,
I find myself in a difficult position because I'm kind of aware in America, and I'm not American, as you can tell, that that the separation of church and state is deeply ingrained in the American politic, and rightly so. And John Kennedy, when challenged on his Catholicism, rightly said this is a separate matter, and as long as I don't bring my Catholicism into policy, you've nothing to complain about. And this is very, very, very laudable. But going back to the doctor, the hypothetical doctor and the astronomer, if you knew that one of the candidates that you're contemplating voting for believed that in the 19th century a man called Joseph Smith dug up some golden tablets which he translated and then conveniently lost, and translated, moreover, although a 19th century man translated them into 17th century English, and lots and lots of other...
And more importantly, unlike some of the... I mean, we also agree that the biblical stories are equally ridiculous, but the difference is we don't know they were written by known con men, but in fact he was a known felon.
Yes. That is true. And so if the person you're contemplating voting for believes all that, believes that the Garden of Eden was in Missouri, believes that Native Americans are the lost 10 tribes of Israel, believes that Jesus visited North America. I mean, these beliefs are barking mad. They contradict everything that's known historically, archaeologically. They contradict science. They contradict history. Now, is it a fair defense for such a candidate to say, "Oh well, don't worry, I won't let my beliefs interfere with my policies"? Well, maybe he won't. But do you want to vote for somebody who's capable of holding in his head such unrealistic nonsense? I mean, do you want a president who believes palpably foolish things, even if he promises that he won't actually let them? It's just back to the problem of the doctor and the astronomer again.
We now have a lot of evidence from cognitive psychology that this begins at a very early age, perhaps as early as age 2 or 3. I'll just give you one experiment among many. Jesse Baring's research with little children who are brought into a room and they're given one of these little balls with Velcro on it, and you throw it at the dartboard and it sticks on it. That's the goal. So they're brought into the room, but they're not allowed to just do that with their good hand. They're turned around and they have to do it backwards. So they're really bad at it, as any of us would be. And then the experimenter leaves the room and he says, "Just do the best you can and come out and tell me how you did." So of course they all walk up there and just stick it on the thing, right? All right. Part 2 of the experiment. The little children are brought in and each of them is told, right next to the dartboard is a chair here. On the chair is Princess Anne. She's an invisible princess, and she can see everything you're doing. Experimenter leaves the room. All of a sudden, the children stop going up to cheat. The shadow of enforcement, the sort of infusion of agency of an invisible being in a chair that sees what we do, keeps track of our moral behavior, begins at a very early age. Our brains have evolved this capacity for agency. That's the earliest God beliefs. Okay, next line of evidence. Here's what happened about 5,000 to 7,000 years ago. These animistic, simple God beliefs and sort of social religions that evolved to help us live together as a social primate species began to break down as populations grew from a couple dozen to a couple hundred individuals to thousands, tens of thousands, millions of people in state societies, from bands and tribes to chieftains and states. We needed some more formal means of behavior control and enforcing the rules of social cooperation. 2 institutions evolved for that: government and religion. Government says, here's a copy of the rules, everybody gets one, and here's the punishments if you break the rules. Religion says, if you think you got away with it and you cheated the state, nuh-uh, there's an eye in the sky that knows all and sees all, and in the next life, justice will be served. That's a very powerful force for social control. Again, if it happens with little kids, you can do it with adults, which is what churches are all about. So that's the modern version. That's what happens with it.
Hi, thank you very much for coming. I was just had a question about something that many people will probably find to be a less serious issue, but I'm curious about your thoughts on art, music, and creativity, and how those fit in with your other ideas. Those are 3 things that form communities that maybe could be argued of faith. You know, the greatest composers throughout history always dedicating their work to God and things of that nature. And I'm just curious how you view these things and the beauty of these things to be similar to the beauty that you've suggested you can find in nature, or how you think that they might be more suited, more fitting in with religion. I'm just curious if you think that they need to be devalued in this new system or with your ideas.
Yeah, we don't know of the extraordinary buildings, the great Gothic cathedrals, for example, or even the great mosques of Andalusia. We don't know of the architects who built them, that they were themselves convinced that it was for the greater glory of God. We just know that at the time you couldn't get a job as an architect if you didn't affirm that. And that certainly we know what would have happened to you if you said, "What God?" That would not just have been the end of your career as an architect. So we don't know that about that. We don't know the same about even the devotional painters. We don't know that they were believers. Or the composers. Of the devotional poets, and I'm on stronger ground here as a literary critic, and I know a bit more about it, people like John Donne or George Herbert, I think it would be very, very hard to fake writing that if you weren't a believer. It would be extremely hard. Where would you get your inspiration from? My feeling is that is real devotional poetry, and I personally couldn't be without it. We'd be much poorer. To stay with literature, if you don't mind. The King James version of the Bible, the King James translation, referred to in the New York Times recently as the St. James translation, is itself a great work of literature, and one couldn't be without it. If you don't understand the beauty of that liturgy, there's a lot of Shakespeare and of Milton and Blake you wouldn't get. You wouldn't know what was going on. So it's part of literacy to know it. I once wrote a book about the Parthenon, a very important building for Western civilization. Great deal to be learned from it, and by its beauty and by its symmetry and by its extraordinary architecture and sculpture. But I no longer care about the cult of Pallas Athena. I no longer care about the mystical ceremonies, some of them involving animal sacrifice and possibly human, that were conducted on the road from Eleusis. And I don't have to care about Athenian imperialism and what it did to the Greek colonies in the rest of the Mediterranean. I can just appreciate the building and know about the philosophical context and the plays of Sophocles and all the other things that were going on at the same time, without any reference to their gods. So I propose that what culture largely means to us now is how to deal with civilizational art and great creativity in a post-supernatural era. In other words, how to keep all of that's of value without having to care about the cult of Pallas Athena, for example, or being forced to bear in mind that, say, St. Peter's in Rome, actually not, I think, that impressive a building, was built by a special sale of indulgences. I mean, that's how the money for it was raised. We can consider that independently now. We can value it as a building without knowing that, though I always find it slightly hard to forget.
Right. Okay. I was just curious. I mean, I wanted to speak more towards how all these things in art and music and creativity are often relayed between individuals as being spiritual,
yes,
or something along that nature, whether or not the actual topic.
Well, then let me add, because it's a good opportunity to do so.
Yeah.
And I wanted to say a bit more of this when I was speaking first. I think that the human need for the transcendent or the spiritual is undeniable, but that's not the supernatural. It's very important to understand. The feeling that people get out of landscape and music, or landscape and music in combination, or the feeling of war and love at the same time has had extraordinary consequences for many people, say, or one or other on their own. These are the things we can't do without, but there's no reason to attribute them to the supernatural.
Yes,
you're not glimpsing anything but nature from that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hi. So it turns out if you follow the money trail back for a lot of these things, this whole creationism, teaching creationism idea, you'll eventually find political organizations that are trying to energize a base, right? And these bases,
yes,
what they'd like to do is to get these people to feel like they're being attacked. And in a lot of the discussions we have and in your presentation, there's a fine line between attacking people versus attacking ideas, right? What do you do to kind of ensure that you're not going after people and not making people feel like you're telling them that they're idiots, for example, right? How do you make that separation?
Well, I think my answer's been anticipated, perhaps.
All right.
If someone tells me that I've hurt their feelings, I say, well, I'm still waiting to hear what your point is.
Right.
I'm very depressed how in this country you can be told, that's offensive, as if those two words constitute an argument or a comment. Not to me, they don't. And I'm not running for anything, so I don't have to pretend to like people when I don't.
Right. Thanks.
So that's just kind of a fun little example here of the sorts of things we do. Skeptic is the quarterly publication. Each one has a particular theme. Like this one is on the future of intelligence. Are people getting smarter or dumber? I have an opinion of this myself because the business I'm in. But in fact, people, it turns out, are getting smarter. Three IQ points per 10 years going up. Sort of an interesting thing. With science, don't think of skepticism as a thing, or even science as a thing. Are science and religion compatible? It's like, is science and plumbing compatible? They're just two different things. Science is not a thing, it's a verb. It's a way of thinking about things. It's a way of looking for natural explanations for all phenomena. I mean, what's more likely, that extraterrestrial intelligences or multidimensional beings travel across the vast distances of interstellar space to leave a crop circle in Farmer Bob's field in Pucker Brush, Kansas to promote skeptic.com, our webpage? Or is it more likely that a reader of Skeptic did this with Photoshop? And in all cases, we have to ask, what's the more likely explanation? And before we say something is out of this world, we should first make sure that it's not in this world. What's more likely, that Arnold had a little extraterrestrial help in his run for the governorship, or that the World Weekly News makes stuff up? And part of that, the same theme, is expressed nicely here in the Sidney Harris cartoon. For those of you in the back, it says here, then a miracle occurs. I think you need to be more explicit here in step 2. This single slide completely dismantles the intelligent design arguments. There's nothing more to it than that. You can say a miracle occurs, it's just that it doesn't explain anything. It doesn't offer anything. There's nothing to test. It's the end of the conversation for intelligent design creationists. Whereas, and it's true, scientists sometimes throw terms out as linguistic place fillers, dark energy or dark matter or something like that. Until we figure out what it is, we'll just call it this. It's the beginning of the causal chain for science. For intelligent design creationists, it's the end of the chain. So again, we can ask this, what's more likely, are UFOs, alien spaceships, or perceptual cognitive mistakes, or even fakes? This is a UFO shot from my house in Altadena, California, looking down over Pasadena. And if it looks a lot like a Buick hubcap, it's because it is. You don't even need Photoshop, you don't need high-tech equipment, you don't need computers. This was shot with a throwaway Kodak Instamatic camera. You just have somebody off on the side with a hubcap ready to go, cameras ready, that's it. So, although it's possible that most of these things are fake or illusions or so on, and that some of them are real, it's more likely that all of them are fake, like the crop circles. On a more serious note, in all of science, we're looking for a balance between data and theory. In the case of Galileo, he had two problems when he turned his telescope to Saturn. First of all, there was no theory of planetary rings, and second of all, his data was grainy and fuzzy, and he couldn't quite make out what it was he was looking at. So he wrote that he has seen, I have observed that the furthest planet has 3 bodies, and this is what he ended up concluding that he saw. So without a theory of planetary rings and with only grainy data, you can't have a good theory, and it wasn't solved until 1655. This is Christian Huygens' book in which he cataloged all the mistakes that people made in trying to figure out what was going on with Saturn. It wasn't until Huygens had 2 things. He had a good theory of planetary rings and how the solar system operated, and then he had better telescopic, more fine-grained data in which he could figure out that as the Earth is going around faster, according to Kepler's laws, than Saturn, then we catch up with it and we see the angles of the rings at different angles there, and that's in fact turns out to be true. The problems with having a theory is that your theory may be loaded with cognitive biases. So one of the problems of explaining why people believe weird things is that we have things on a simple level, and then I'll go to more serious ones, like we have a tendency to see faces. This is the face on Mars, which was in 1976, so there was a whole movement to get NASA to photograph that area because people thought this was monumental architecture made by Martians. Well, it turns out here's the close-up of it from 2001. If you squint, you can still see the face. And when you're squinting, what you're doing is you're turning that from fine grain to coarse grain. And so you're reducing the quality of your data. And if I didn't tell you what to look for, you'd still see the face because we're programmed by evolution to see faces. Faces are important for us socially. And of course, happy faces, faces of all kinds are easy to see. You can see the happy face on Mars there. If astronomers were frogs, perhaps they'd see Kermit the Frog. Do you see him there? Little froggy legs. Or if geologists were elephants. Religious iconography, discovered by a Tennessee baker in 1996. He charged $5 a head to come see the nun bun until he got a cease and desist from Mother Teresa's lawyer. Here's Our Lady of Guadalupe and Our Lady of Watsonville, just down the street, or is it up the street from here? Tree bark is particularly good because it's nice and grainy, branchy, black and white, splotchy, and you can get the pattern-seeking. Humans are pattern-seeking animals. Here's the Virgin Mary on the side of a glass window in Sao Paulo. Here's the Virgin Mary made her appearance on a cheese sandwich, which I got to actually hold in a Las Vegas casino, of course, this being America. This casino paid $28,500 on eBay for the cheese sandwich. But who does it really look like? The Virgin Mary? Has that sort of puckered lips, 1940s era look. Virgin Mary in Clearwater, Florida. I actually went to see this one. There was a lot of people there of the faithful come to be in their wheelchairs and crutches and so on. And we went down and investigated. Just to give you a size, that's Dawkins, me, and the amazing Randy next to this 2.5 story size image. All these candles, so many thousands of candles people had lit in tribute to this. So we walked around the backside just to see what was going on here. It turns out wherever there's a sprinkler head and a palm tree, you get the effect. Here's the Virgin Mary on the backside, which they started to wipe off. I guess you can only have one miracle per building.
Not everyone is happy in their religion. Not every believer is at ease in the mosque or in the church or even in their dreams. They pretend to believe more than they do for various reasons, but this is not the same as not believing at all. They doubt, but with that doubt comes fear. For in Islam and Christianity, doubt alone is reason enough for God to roast you on a spit forever without a single coffee break. My aim has always been to persuade such people that there is nothing to fear, to convince them that their doubt is not to be the cause of their damnation, but the key to their salvation from a life tainted and occasionally ruined by irrational fear. It's a battle of ideas, and as such, the battlefield is the mind. But as with an actual battle, military tactics can be of use. But what use is an entire army, indeed all the armies on earth, against an all-powerful, all-knowing, supernatural God? The answer is, of course, no use whatsoever, if the God concerned is real. But even if the God isn't real, an army is still no use. No weapon is of any use. But that doesn't mean that you're unarmed. Far from it. Though there are those who will try to persuade you that this is the case. One of the prime functions of religious scripture is to convince you that you are powerless. But, as with so much that religion has told you, this is the opposite of the truth. Before you and within you, there is an array of effective weaponry: knowledge, curiosity, courage, logic, rationality, not to mention the keyboard and computer that give you access to the largest library ever known, the internet. You are not unarmed. You're armed to the teeth. You just don't know it. If you are uncomfortable, if you are willing to fight for your mind, as the great philosopher Rooster Cogburn once said, "Fill your hand, you son of a..." If God is real, then you are essentially trapped in its world where you can be crushed at any time. But if this God is just an idea, then it is trapped in your mind where you have the power, if you can learn to use it. But what can you do? Where should you start? Any general will tell you that you do not, as a rule, divide your main force on the battlefield, and you never, ever, ever attack your target at its strongest point. But this is the mistake that so many make when trying to disprove a supernatural God. They throw everything they've got, their entire arsenal, all their intellectual force, directly at the God, trying to unravel convoluted theological arguments that have been refined for centuries. And they all too often fail. As Christians will often tell you, Christianity is the anvil that broke 1,000 hammers. But this isn't any wonder. For as with an anvil, all religious scripture is designed for purpose, to take the blows. You do not hammer an anvil away. You melt it down. Do not make the mistake of directly attacking the supernatural God you wish to escape. Gods are far too slippery and they can anticipate any ambush. But they do have a weakness, an unguarded gate to their heavily fortified castle. Shift your aim to the left. That is your target. That is the weak point. All gods are supernatural. All of them. If you use your energy to study the natural, to dismiss your belief in the supernatural, then whatever remains, whatever might have created this universe, it cannot, by definition, be a god. Defeat the supernatural, and you will defeat all gods. They will simply melt away. The supernatural and the paranormal cannot bear close scrutiny. You may believe in astrology, tarot cards, Ouija boards, ghosts, poltergeists, telepathy, telekinesis, spells, curses, clairvoyance, mediums, remote viewing, faith healing, miracle cures, crystal energy, etc. But if I offered you $1 million to find the truth on any of these matters, you could and you would do it. You would apply your mind to the problem as you've never done before, and this, of course, is what's required to break free. I used to believe in ghosts. For 28 years, all the questions and doubts I had could be answered by any idiot I encountered, and it was enough to keep me believing. But after studying the natural world for only a few months, I lost my belief in ghosts without even trying. I had far better answers for my questions. For instance, how much does a ghost weigh? The answer you will get from most people is nothing at all. But if that's true, ghosts cannot have mass or momentum and cannot feel the force of gravity. And if that's true, there's nothing binding them to the surface of the earth. Without gravity to keep them here, any ghost that appeared before you would instantly disappear with a somewhat shocked expression at tens of thousands of miles per hour due to the Earth's rotation and its motion around the Sun, not to mention the motion of our Sun and planet around our galaxy. The ghosts would not be haunting the place where they died, for that place was left behind, lost between the stars. How are we supposed to be seeing these ghosts? They have supposedly been photographed. But for us to see or photograph anything, light must be involved. Now, you may have heard of moonlight, starlight, daylight, firelight, but we know without any doubt whatsoever that all light is the same. Electromagnetic radiation, photons. Light can only be emitted from or reflected by solid matter with mass. And before they could walk through any wall, they would sink through the floor and possibly keep going to the centre of the earth. Now, I know many of you are saying that I am being too literal, that ghosts belong in the spiritual realm. The same place, incidentally, where I keep my $1 million. But if ghosts can be seen, heard, or move so much as a feather in this world, they must be in the physical realm at the time, and they could be detected, proved to exist by nothing more sophisticated than a set of bathroom scales. Once you look into it, there seems to be no difference between the spiritual realm and fantasy land, and a growing number of people don't think this is a coincidence. Where the spiritual and the paranormal are concerned, each contradictory answer only adds 10 more unanswerable questions. Many are defeated by this instead of drawing the obvious conclusion that these are not answers. This is not knowledge. But there are answers, and there is bullshit, and you can learn to tell them apart. Seeking advice from someone who is profoundly ignorant is like asking your dog what's on TV tonight. You might ask, and the dog might bark a reply, but you will have learned precisely nothing.
Squirrel!
Do your own experiments. If you had a grandfather called Zachariah, who died from a bolt of lightning, go see a medium and see for yourself how many guesses it takes the medium to even land on a Z, let alone the cause of your grandfather's demise. Enjoy it. Watch them squirm. And when the medium says the spirits don't always answer, tell them that's fine, because you don't always pay. Whereas, if an analogy could be drawn to science on this matter, science could provide you with your grandfather's full name, address, date and place of birth, family tree, phone number, the time and place of his death, and the voltage of the lightning bolt that got him. The religious will show you an empty boxing ring and tell you that there is an invisible, 20-foot-tall, bare-knuckle prize fighter in that ring waiting for you. No sane person would get in the ring if they even half believed it, but look closely, look at the ring. It's empty. Who would be afraid to enter an empty boxing ring? Unless, of course, they're afraid that the ring is empty.
Okay, gentleman down the front here.
Hi PZ, thanks for the question, thanks for the talk. Matt Jacob from Perth and the University of Western Australia. Nice to know I'm not alone. I guess the question, it's kind of the nature of our lack of belief that we always seem to come across headstrong creationists and Christians and religious people that are kind of immovable to any sort of logical debate or argument. It's as fun as it is getting in these long, drawn-out debates with them. Do you think that we should actually get involved in these sorts of things? And because it kind of seems as though we're wasting our time with the kind of people that have what I call a baseless passion. Feels like we're not getting anywhere. Or should we just sort of take a starting point of, hey guys, the debate's over. We kind of have a good idea of where we're at now. Now let's move on with things. What are your thoughts on that?
The debate really is over. Creationism is false. It's that simple. I would say that if you're talking about a formal debate, I definitely say don't do it. It's a waste of time. I did one just this fall that sort of clinched it for me in that the guy I was debating turned into a total raving lunatic. He waited about 30 seconds into his talk before he blew his top. But anyway, so it was a total waste of time, so I agree there. And all you're doing is giving them unwarranted respect if you give them a place on the podium with you. Okay, but let me add a but to that, and that is one-on-one, do it. That what you can often do is make an argument face-to-face that, they can't run away from you, and they'll actually have to listen to you, and you'll have to listen to them, and you can get a good conversation going. And what I found is often very useful in these kinds of discussions is that you learn why this guy is such a nutcase about creationism. And you learn what he's really concerned about. And the most common thing I've learned when I sit down one-on-one with a creationist is that the number one thing they're concerned about is that their children will go to hell if they listen to me. And, that kind of resonates. I wouldn't want my children to go to hell either. It's why I raised them as atheists. But you can appreciate and understand where they're coming from a little better. And often in these one-on-one discussions, you have a more sincere meeting of the minds, and you can appreciate what they're doing. And I can do things to reassure them, like I tell them, I teach biology, and in my biology class, I don't say that there is no God, and I don't tell them that you have to be an atheist to be a scientist, and I can reassure him that he can send his kids to my class, and they'll just learn the facts, and he can poison their minds with all the other crap on his spare time, but I'll teach them the stuff that they need to know to get through college and get a career. And that makes them happy.
Okay, the second row here.
Thank you. My name's Rob, I'm from Melbourne. I completely agree with you about, in the modern sense, science and religion being incompatible. But I'd just like to take everything back to get your own comment on in the very ancient, very first days before we had any sort of established science. I'm talking very, very ancient, just tribalism. Some people would say that there was a role for religion, as in someone might have worked out it is best to plant the wheat on the 4th of July. But no one would follow them. No one would actually do it. So what they did is they got a religion together so everyone would follow it, and they actually would plant the wheat on the 4th of July. Do you sort of get the point I'm getting at?
Yeah, that they're using religion as kind of the carrot and stick to get them to do something sensible. The problem with that argument is how did this religious guy know what was the best date? I suspect that what was happening is that he was listening to the farmers, the people who were doing the planting.
I'm saying it's the same guy originally, perhaps. That the scientists got really pissed off that no one would listen and remember the next year to plan on the 4th of July.
Well,
and he got sick of no one listening to him.
That seems a little far-fetched to me, because I think, if I were in that tribe, I would find it far more persuasive when the farmer brings in the bumper crop of wheat every year. That's what I'd be looking for, is you feed your family really well. What are you doing to do this? And I will do this too. I would also say that, in these tribes where religion was operating, there were the guys who were sitting there figuring out how to knap flint and make really sharp knives, the scientists. And then there were the guys making little wooden dolls and sticking pins in them, the religious people. And guess which one worked? So yeah, I think religion has been parasitizing all along. You might be able to find some contrived instances where you could make an argument, well, yeah, maybe they got this going in this particular way. It might actually be a better argument to say, for instance, in the floodplain societies where religion was an organizing factor that helped them put together irrigations that could increase yields. Yeah, there's arguments you could make there, but sure, I'm more interested in the irrigation engineers than the priests who made up stories about it.
Okay, thank you. The top row upstairs. Here we go.
Hi, Piz. Hear me? Hi, Pizzy. I'm Doro from Brisbane.
Okay. I have no idea where your voice is coming from, but just go ahead. Talk to me.
Way here.
Way up there. Okay.
Okay. Your profession.
I was worried you were God or something.
Your profession is based on analysing evidence, facts, truth. The people that attack you and vilify you and demonise you, at best, are misinformed. At worst, make up shit. Really.
Yeah.
Their arguments are based on lies. Given that nearly half the American population believes the lies and does not accept the truth of evolution, does that make you despair, or does it make you resolve to try and educate people more?
Yeah, I get paid for teaching people. So, I have an expanding career for the rest of my life. But, no, I don't despair, because I see promise in the future. That what I'm seeing right now is look at this room. You people are willing to learn. What I'm finding is, all across the United States, and I'm sure all across this country too, is that we're seeing more and more of these student groups forming. There are more and more people who are getting vocal about rejecting the old superstitions of the past. And I think that is the first step that needs to be taken to improving that horrible 40 to 50% number. Is let's get rid of the dogma, and let's get people who with open minds who are willing to learn the evidence, and I think those numbers will improve. And I think we can credit the atheist movement for it.
The first row, down there. Yep.
Hi.
Hi.
My first comment was just a little story. About a month ago, I enrolled my daughter in preschool and I was asked 3 questions. The first was, did I have a copy of her birth certificate? The second was she immunised? And the third was, does she have a religion? She's 2.5. And I was asked if she had a religion so they could accommodate that. That leads into my question, I guess, which is about the fact that in Australia, it's pretty commonly accepted that evolution is the truth. And yet, in a lot of schools, public as well, but universally in the private schools, creationism is taught, intelligent design is taught in biology classes by biology teachers.
Yeah? This sounds just like America. Now you're motivated to do something about it, aren't you?
That's my question. Why aren't more biologists and scientists talking about this? We always hear about the religious people and their opinions about their right to teach it. Why don't we hear more about scientists' right to teach only the truth in education?
It's a good question. And it's actually a common problem that I run into all the time, that this is a one-way argument. That if you go into the public schools and you talk to the teachers, what you'll discover is that they're terrified to teach evolution, because when they do, parents will storm in and yell at them and tell them they're going to hell, etc., etc. Don't teach my children this, don't poison their minds. When teachers teach evolution, how many of you, when your kids are taught evolution, go in and tell the teacher, good job, you've done something great? It doesn't happen. It's really rare. So all the feedback is going one way. It's all negative against teaching what they should be teaching, because we all take it for granted that our science teachers are doing a good job. So what we need to do is stop taking it for granted. Talk to the teachers, tell them what they're doing right, and when you've got teachers that are doing something really wrong, kick their ass and get them fired. We hope.
The top row, up there.
Hi, I'm Matt from Melbourne. I was just wondering if you didn't know during the week, some of our universities around Melbourne got invaded by a certain group called Living Waters, giving out some certain books with a special introduction by Ray Comfort. I was wondering what your thoughts are on the fact that he was able to, in a way, co-opt the work of Darwin, The Origin of Species, introduce obviously a half plagiarized, half ridiculous introduction of his own writing, and then hand that out as some kind of token of good faith or whatever he passed it off as.
Okay, you're trying to coax me into using a long string of profanity, aren't you? No, Ray Comfort is a dishonest, lying sleazebag. He is the worst. You know, it's not just that he used Charles Darwin's words to promote a point of view that is unsupported by the evidence and is completely contrary to what Charles Darwin said, but he did it incompetently. If you've read the introduction to that, it's horrible. And it's also plagiarized. The guy is such an intellectual lightweight, he couldn't even write his own essay. What he did is he stole a nice autobiography or nice biography of Darwin that was on the web, and then he went fishing through creationist sites and pulled up paragraphs here and there and spliced them all together in this ghastly mishmash. It's disgraceful. You know, I don't know how Ray Comfort gets up in the morning and looks in the mirror. It's that bad. Yeah. What's that? He's a Kiwi? Oh, yeah.
No, apparently he eats kittens. What's the comment?
I thought that's what we did.
That's right, yeah.
But yeah, no, Ray Comfort is a New Zealander, so that's another strike. Just like Ken Ham. Okay, I got to mention him a few times. Thank you.
One more from the middle.
David from Perth. You mentioned before about the charitable work that religions do, and then that's a good thing and so on. But I've always wondered, you know, would McDonald's fund Ronald McDonald Charities if they didn't get a PR payoff from it? And do you have any thoughts on religion's true motivations behind their charitable work?
Oh, well, I was trying to be nice. Come on. But no, I agree that it's basically a selfish endeavor. That we heard an earlier talk about the economics of religion, and the reason they are doing this is to put up a nice pretense of being a charitable organization so you can get the nice tax cuts and get treated as a privileged institution. So I think that's ultimately what a lot of it is. And then the other part of it, the part that's been around the longest, is that these charitable efforts are always tied to proselytizing. This is an evangelical movement. You know, do we really want to buy friends? Well, Christianity does, but we'll aim a little higher, and I think what we offer is truth rather than a Bible.
Now I'm getting to the meat of my talk, which is I'm a little worried about it because I kind of just gave myself this assignment, and I told Annie Laurie that I was going to do this, and I really don't know if this is something that will be of interest to you, and it might just be depressing, but let's just see how it goes, and I can run off stage or answer questions if it starts going south. Okay. So this is what the assignment I gave myself. I thought, I am going to watch financially successful religious movies that were released in the last year and give you, my opinion of them, let you know the lay of the land. And I realized right away that my task was not so easy as that. And by the way, I'm a huge movie person. That's my hobby and my love and my everything. I watch probably 5 films a week. I love the movies. So to have to stop my movie-going love affair to watch these Christian movies was a sacrifice, people. But I did it for you. But I first had to think, okay, well, what does that mean, religious movie? Which was a really interesting thing to think about, because the horror genre is enormous, and that's really like religious movies. Like, you have to buy into a lot of stuff for a lot of those films. And I hate horror films, And I just thought, I'm ruling out horror films. But there's a film that came out this year called Annabelle Creation. It cost $15 million, and it's made $100 million at the box office domestically, so it's hugely successful. And it's all about a demonically possessed doll. And there was another, it's a prequel of another, which was also a prequel called Annabelle in 2014. And so I was thinking, the Catholic Church must be so embarrassed about these horror films that come out that kind of really take their ideology to the most ridiculous extent. What does the Catholic Church really have to say about these horror films? So I just took Annabelle Creation, didn't watch it, but saw that it was hugely financially successful. And I thought, okay, I'm just going to see what the Catholics have to say about it. And I immediately found an article, that this is just August 20th, 2017, recently, in the National Catholic Register, which is a mainstream Catholic publication. And it was an interview with a priest about what he thought about Annabelle Creation. And I just want to read part of it to you. Okay, what children read, what they see on the screen, can inspire them toward greater faithfulness. Conversely, it can lead them into the sordid world of the occult, even opening them to demonic possession. Father Robert, a priest for more than 10 years and an experienced exorcist, so I'm just reading this going, what? Knows firsthand the unintended consequences when children or adults open the door to demonic activity. You guys, this is like a mainstream Catholic publication. Oftentimes, he says, demonic possession begins because kids get curious after reading books like, say, Harry Potter. An important part of Father Robert's ministry is training other priests at the Vatican's official Exorcism Institute of America. From across the country and around the world, I just have to say, I am this kind of almost Catholic apologist because I lost my faith, I'm an atheist, and I was Catholic, but I liked being Catholic. So people always think I have some big beef against the Catholic Church, and I was saying, no, and I'm always saying how the Catholics aren't so bad. Then I have to read this. Okay. From across the country and around the world, Catholic priests come to the Institute to learn the secrets of this ancient rite so that they too can exorcise demons and evil spirits. Is Annabelle Creation faithful to church teachings? This woman asked Father Robert. Father Robert explained that the devil will only go where he is invited. He talked of 2 cases he knew of personally in which 2 young women, not realizing the gravity of their request, had invited any spiritual being to help them. The consequence was that they exhibited symptoms of demonic possession and then required an exorcism. Yeah. And then he goes on, and then the publication goes on to tell you the 5 signs of demonic possession. And all I kept thinking about, we'll talk about the witch trials. I just kept thinking about foreigners, women, knowledge, information, just all those things in your head. Okay, here's the 5 signs of demonic possession. 1, hidden knowledge. If a person has knowledge they should not have had. That's just a sign of demonic possession. Okay, 2, languages, speaking in an unfamiliar language. 3, superhuman strength. Father Robert said he knew of a 5'4" girl who was 110 pounds who threw 5 large men off of her who were trying to hold her down during an exorcism. Oh my God! 5, extreme aversion to the sacred, such as an unwillingness to go to church. Yes! And 5, levitation. Father Robert had personal knowledge of a case in Louisiana this year in which a person was seated in a chair and was able to levitate and proceed down the hall away from the priest. Whoa! Okay. I can't believe they allow that stuff. I mean, well, I guess I can. Okay, that brings me, okay, you guys, I know you're looking to laugh, but I just need to rant to you. Okay, do you guys know about Bill Donahue, the guy who's the head of the Catholic League? Okay, I did not realize until I started researching, because then I was like on my Catholic thing, so I started going around the web looking at stuff, and I hate this guy so much. I mean, Okay. He has so much power. He says he has 350,000 followers, but I think that's just like who give their email address to him. I mean, I don't think it's really members, because he's really funded by the Heritage Foundation. He's actually kind of responsible for Trump being in office. It's true. And that is because, well, first of all, let me just tell you about this guy. He sided with Al-Qaeda with the attack on the Charlie Hebdo attack in Paris, because he said that people should not insult religious figures, and if they do so, murder is justified. He thinks that marriage is not about love or making people happy, but about reproduction, which really made me laugh because, and when I say laugh, I mean cry, laugh, horror, laugh. Okay, I've been married twice, that's right. The second one stuck. But the first time I got married in the Catholic Church, and we had to go to this priest, and we had to do these counseling sessions with this priest. And I remember my first husband, Steve, and I went, and the priest said, now do you know what marriage is, the purpose of marriage? And I remember there was just like this long pause. And then Steve said, to love one another. Something like I was like, to look out for one another. And he said, no, it's about having children. And I said, well, what if you can't have children? And he said, well, then it's not really a marriage. Yeah, that's what he said to us. And yet, I still got married, which I don't understand that. Okay.
Even the most devout believers do not actually have faith in their God. And no group proves this more than conservative Christians in the United States. Think about it, guys. In the Bible, Jesus, who Christians believe is God, not only taught non-violence and opposed violent retaliation, he also taught his followers to love their enemies and turn the other cheek anytime they were attacked. Yet, across America today, the most religiously devout demographics also happen to be the most pro-firearms. You've all must have heard that quote, if there is one thing conservative Christians in the US love more than with Jesus, it's guns, man. And I'm not against anyone protecting themselves and their loved ones. By all means, man, do what you've got to do. But isn't it weird that for these people, the faith that their God will protect them and do what's best for them isn't quite enough? And it is so much so not quite enough that they're willing to embrace violence themselves, which is the one thing that Jesus Christ, their God and Savior, was sincerely against. And it's actually not just that, man. As Daniel Dennett generously put it, how many Christians today do you think would jump in front of a hail of bullets with the sure faith that God will intervene and save their lives? Or, as Sam Harris stated, if the pilot of a plane came over the comms and said, hey guys, it's preacher so-and-so, and I do not have the credentials required to fly a plane, and in fact I've never flown one before, but in order to prove the glory of God, I've asked the pilot to step aside, and I intend to land the beast myself. But don't you worry, everyone, I've been commanded by the one true God to do this, and I have total faith that I will be able to land it safely. In that scenario, ladies and gentlemen, wouldn't even the most devout believers, man, shit their pants? And you know what? It's not just these imaginary scenarios either. We have real life ones that prove that even the strongest devout believers aren't actually as strong believers as they'd like us to believe. We see preachers daily on television claiming to possess the healing gift of the Holy Spirit, man. And the churches that these preachers lead are often filled to the brim with thousands, if not tens of thousands of believers. But then why won't these believers stand in their faith, pray to God, and head into an Ebola camp without any protective equipment and heal those poor souls in Central Africa that are getting ravaged by the illness, man? Truly, that will bring most, if not all of us, many steps closer to absolutely believing in the existence of the God of Abraham. Such a simple thing, man, and after all, it's something they claim to do every single week. And in case they think that Ebola is too risky and they do not believe their faith like a health insurance covers them to that level, how come not a single one of them was willing to step up when the world was reeling from a pandemic and simply say, hey man, I've been appointed to go into a so-and-so hospital and heal every single person affected by the C-19 virus? Not a single one, man, took up that challenge, and instead they all closed up their churches like all other businesses did, and they went into hiding, waiting like the rest of us for scientists to figure out this shit and return some normalcy into the world. And later on, without any shame whatsoever, when they returned to their churches, they did not waste any time either branding the pandemic up as a punishment from the Lord or giving the same God all the credit for containing the issue. If any of you actually have a video of a single church calling for a round of applause in praise of the good work that scientists were able to do, kindly send it to me, man. I promise to feature it in the next video that I do upload. So yeah guys, these preachers would rather sit back and try it in the comfort of their business offices, heal one person at a time, and still demand that their congregation bow at the feet of their gifts. This actually brings me to another issue that I've always had with the trail of thought that believers tend to follow when it comes to miracles performed by their favorite preachers. When a person pops on the news claiming to have been healed from a disease deemed incurable by scientific standards, and they claim that they were healed after a preacher placed their hands on them, Christians are often quick to highlight that scenario as sufficient evidence for non-believers still on the fence to fully commit to the grace of God, the Abrahamic religion. But when the non-believer asks why God saw it fit to heal this one adult and not the millions of children lying in hospital beds from excruciating diseases, ask that, and all of a sudden, man, the reply is either not only do you not understand the will of God, but what you're doing is actually a grave sin because it's questioning the actions or inactions of God. But in these cases, usually the believers think they do understand the will of God when they parade the single act of miracle before all of us as sufficient proof that their God is loving and merciful, man. Tell me that doesn't remind you of that friend of yours in a toxic relationship, the one that is constantly abused by their partner, but anytime the partner does one good deed for them, they cannot stop talking about it. And if you dare ask the friend why they give so much weight to this one good action but choose to disregard the countless acts of abuse, all of a sudden you do not know their partner like you do, and you should stay out of their business, man. Tell me that doesn't sound exactly like that. But you know what? At least we have sufficient proof that this toxic partner exists. Imagine being in a toxic relationship with a being you have no proof exists at all. And before you leave, guys, I actually have a quick question that has nothing to do with anything we've discussed above, but it is a question about the Bible that I'd love to see getting answered. Christians and Jews usually claim that Moses was the author of Deuteronomy, but that doesn't really make much sense, because then how could have Moses written or known about his own death or the events that would happen immediately after his death? These are all things that can be found in the book of Deuteronomy. And if he indeed through some miracle was able to perfectly prophesy what will happen in the future and after his death, then why does he refer to himself in third person in all these verses, man? I look forward to exploring this further in the video that I'll upload the day after tomorrow, man. Otherwise, that's it for today, man. Did you love the discussions I've put together today? I sure did, and I really hope that you did as well. Feel free to recommend the people that you'd like to see me feature in future videos, man. And in the meantime, stay safe. Love you all. I'll see you the day after tomorrow, man. Peace.